This is a story of war, of strategy, and of the hidden costs of intervention. This is the story of how freedom became a pretext. In March 2003, the United States led a coalition into Iraq, claiming Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. The world watched as cities were bombed, statues fell, and a regime collapsed. But no WMDs were ever found. What followed wasn't peace, but years of insurgency, a deadly civil war, and the birth of ISIS. Hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians were killed, millions displaced. The country's infrastructure was shattered. So was it really about weapons, or something else?
There's overwhelming evidence that strategic interests, such as control over oil and regional dominance, were major motivating factors. WMDs were the cover story.
The invasion wasn't just about removing Saddam Hussein. It was about reshaping the Middle East according to Western strategic interests. Internal documents later revealed that plans for regime change in Iraq existed long before 9/11's. The weapons of mass destruction narrative provided the legal and moral justification the public would accept. But the real agenda was geopolitical dominance in a resource-rich region. In 2011, Western powers turned to Libya. NATO launched airstrikes under the banner of humanitarian intervention to stop Muammar Gaddafi from massacring his own people. Gaddafi fell, but what came next was a descent into chaos. No functioning state, rival governments, armed militias, slave markets. Libya became a failed state. The intervention, though swift and surgical, had no plan for peace. Removing a dictator is easy. Building a democracy, that's the hard part. And Libya showed what happens when you skip that second step. The humanitarian intervention that was supposed to save lives created a humanitarian catastrophe. Libya went from being Africa's most prosperous nation to a breeding ground for terrorism and human trafficking. The very people the intervention was meant to protect became victims of the chaos that followed. Oil production collapsed. Basic services disappeared. Society fractured along tribal lines. Afghanistan was the first target after 9/11's. The Taliban were removed, but 20 years later, after trillions of dollars and thousands of lives, the Taliban returned to power. What was achieved? The West promised to bring democracy and stability. But after 20 years of nation-building, the system collapsed in just 11 days. Over 47,000 civilians died in the war. More than 2.7 million Afghans fled their country. Was the mission ever clear, or was it doomed from the start?